This podcast is part of the Batman Universe Podcast Network, hosted by the BatmanUniverse.net. Check out everything related to Batman and the entire Bat family at the BatmanUniverse.net, including news and original content related to comics, movies, television, merchandise, video games, and more. Also, check out some of the other unique podcasts that TBU has to offer. Consider supporting this podcast by becoming a patron on Patreon. Even $1 can go a long way in supporting this content that you enjoy. Look for a link over at thebatmanuniverse.net to offer your support now. And now, on with the show.
You don't like the Drake.
I hate the Drake.
I love
$19.89, and currently for our Tim Drake, it is 1996, which still feels like a millennia ago. But it's the good times, right? You can hold us through all of our social media outlets. We're on Twitter at ELTD Podcast. You can find us on Facebook, facebook.com/everyonelovesthedrake. You can follow us on Instagram, and you can email into the show at robineltdpodcast@yahoo.com. And you can check us out on YouTube. Terrence is manning the helm. He's mining for gold in Arkansas right now. I'm just going to say he's mining the helm, whistling while he works over at YouTube. So he's putting up some cool content over there. And if you listen on iTunes, Apple Podcasts, leave a review and rate the show and leave us a comment, and we will read that on the show as well. So like I said, I'm one of your hosts, Rob, and with me tonight is Jay Yaws. How are you doing tonight, sir?
I am good, Rob, and once again, I am just very glad to be part of the crew now. So just enjoying being able to talk the Drake with you.
Yeah. And good old 1990s in comics where everything was foiled and embossed and, you know, holographic. You got, sometimes it was polybagged with a BMX bike flyer type of thing. Trading cards, yeah. So I don't think there was any in this particular issue, or this Robin guy would have obviously had it by now. But if you've clicked on this episode, this is going to be our single-ish? I can't even talk. Our single issue for tonight. And so this could be call this the one and done series, as we're trying to get the team rallied back around to give a full-fledged episode, but we're going to give our full-fledged attention. So this is for the final night. And in a lot of the crossovers that at least the Robin book would be part of, Dixon always found a way to have Tim be part of the story, but be able to read this book as a standalone. If you were just like, I'm only buying Robin and Batman and a couple other ones, I'm not going to buy, the Final Night Power of Shazam and Final Night, Superboy and the Parallax issue or Legion. You could just read this and get kind of the sense of what's going on. So I know this is one of those on the show. Ryan's like, oh, we're coming up to this crossover. How is Rob going to handle it? Guess what, Ryan? I do it in a voiceover that's going to appear very soon.
With the grappling gun sound or whatever that is.
Yeah, that's right. But before we get into the Robin issue, let's go through this wonderful voiceover that I have prepared, and we will get into all of that wonderful stuff in just a minute, so don't go anywhere. All right, we're going to do the synopsis for the story of The Final Night. Now, normally I would read the synopsis for the issue that we're going to read, but since Jay and I are only actually talking about one single issue, we pretty much talk the issue through, so it kind of seemed redundant to do the synopsis when we're going to kind of just follow the book along for our discussion. So we thought for that, if you haven't read The Final Night, I pulled this from DC Wikia page and I added a few little embellishments to kind of enhance the story a little bit. And I will go through the four main parts of the Final Night story. So in case you wanted a frame reference, if you haven't read it, or if you didn't want to drag out your long boxes, here's the synopsis for you. So like I said, I'm pulling this off DC Fandom's Wikia page, and the information for the issues, the four main issues of the story, are coming from Mike's Amazing World. Final Night number 1 had a cover date of November 1996 with an on-sale date of September 4th, 1996. The creative team is exactly the same for all four of the main Final Night proper issues. The writer being Carl Kessel, the penciler is Stuart A. Inman, Joseph A. Mares Jr., the letter is Casper Sanandio, and the colorist is Lee Longenridge, and this has been reprinted in a trade paperback that came out in 1988, and I believe that's the last proper trade paperback. You can find it relatively easy, but again. So for the other 3 issues for Final Night, I won't read the writing credits, but I'll give you the street dates for those. Issue number 2 came out with the on-sale date of September 11th, 1996. And then issue number 3, September 18th, 1996. And then finally, issue number 4, September 25th, 1996. And again, the writing and creative team is exactly the same on all the issues. And all the covers are done by Stuart Inman, is the penciler, and the inker is Jose F. Marzan. So now the synopsis for the 4 main Final Night issues, and there were 24 total issues that made up the giant crossover, and of course Robin is one of them, and we'll get to Robin's credits at the end of the synopsis. So here's the synopsis for The Final Night. Dusk visits the new Tamaran to warn them of the Sun Eater, but she is mistaken for a spy and imprisoned. Coriander, however, believes Dusk is not a hostile and learns to communicate with her. As the Tamaranians launch a suicide mission against the Sun Eater, Coriander helps Dusk escape into her ship and to warn the next planet in the Sun Eater's path. Ultimately, the new Tamaran is destroyed, but Coriander was able to survive aboard her small scout ship. Part 1. Dusk. An alien space vessel crash lands on Earth just off the West River in Metropolis. A woman named Dusk emerges only to find Superman and the Legion of Superheroes standing before her. Center Girl uses her telepathy to translate the frightened woman's thoughts. Dusk warns them that an entity known as Sun Eater is en route to this star's solar system. When it arrives, it will consume all the energy from the sun, thus destroying all life on the planet Earth. Superman calls together a special conversation of superheroes. Attending are members of the JLA, past and present, the Legion, the Marvel family, and many others. Now, we should probably call them the Shazam family. Mr. Miracle decides to create an oversized boom tube to funnel the Sun Eater to an unpopulated domain. The Sun Eater overloads the boom tube, thus the plan fails. The next strategy involves the creation of a secondary sun to act as a lure to the Sun Eater. All of the energy-based superheroes put their powers into creating a new sun, but this too proves to be a fruitless endeavor. Elsewhere, Lex Luthor decides it's time to step up and lend a hand. Part 2. Lex Luthor arrives on Metropolis early to help out during this new crisis. Superman welcomes him into the conference and immediately sets out informing new strategies to save Earth. Other superheroes, meanwhile, work overtime across the globe helping others in need. Ray saves a family trapped inside a burning building, while Wonder Woman douses the flames carrying a fire truck atop her shoulders. In Paris, France, Batman encounters Vandal Savage, who's in the midst of stealing the Mona Lisa. Vandal tries to shoot Batman, but Superman arrives just in time to deflect the bullets. The impact still takes its toll on Man of Steel, whose strength is still waning in the absence of the yellow solar sun radiation. Luthor works with Brainiac 5 and the Legion of Superheroes and invents a probe designed to analyze the Sun Eater. Green Lantern flies the probe into the heart of the sun, but he is forced to abort the mission when the probe begins to overload. Dusk wanders in the snowy streets of Metropolis. A gang of hungry civilians come up upon her, blaming her for bringing the Sun Eater to Earth. Flash, Nightwing, and Robin arrive to fight off the frightened mob. Dusk flees, but the mob pursues her. Suddenly, a young costume hero named Ferrero arrives on the scene and defends Dusk from the horde of desperate citizens. Part 4. With the living energy of the sun depleted, Earth begins to quickly freeze. Those who can adapt to quell the panicking mobs of the civilian unrest, but proves to be a difficult period for all. Guy Gardner turns warriors into an ADHOC medical center, and other heroes labor around the clock in an effort to save as many lives as possible. Etrick and the Demon broadcast transmissions straight from hell, offering to save the people of Earth. The cost of the act, however, would be the souls of every human being on the planet. The Earth is united in its adamant refusal to accept the Demon's help. The Spectre travels to the Spirit Center of Earth to offer comfort and warmth to the Mother Earth, Gia. At Star Labs Command Center, the news grows worse. Brainiac 5 determines that the sun is shrinking in size, but not in mass. It will soon go supernova, thus creating a solar superflare that will turn the planet into ash cinder. The Phantom Stranger takes Dusk on an astral journey across the planet, showing her images of hope and the internal strength of humanity. Fire, Firestorm, Zatanna, and Ray unite a family in South America Village. Sentinel, Jade, and Ospeden save even more people in Kaido. Wonder Woman uses her magic lasso to repair a damaged bridge, while Warrior rescues even more people with his unique Voldurian superpowers. Meanwhile, Superman visits his parents in Smallville. Without the power of the sun to energize him, his powers are quickly fading. He fears that this may be the last time he will ever see his family. Part 4. The Final Night. Lex Luthor devises yet another sale date is September 25th, 1996. The cover price is $1.95. The editor is the late, great Dennis J. O'Neill. The title is Iced. Writer Chuck Dixon. The penciler is Staz Johnson. Inker Robert Allen Smith. The letter is Timothy Harkins. And the colors are the lovely Adrian Roy. And now, Jay and I's discussion of Robin 35, The Final Night.
Teen Titans, meet Team Robin. Now, if you'll excuse us, we have a city council to save. Mission complete. Nice work, Robin.
Couldn't have done it without you, Robin.
Did you see Robin out there? Robin. Team Robin.
All right, let's take a look at this cover. We've already heard the little brief synopsis from DC Wiki. Thank you guys for doing that, so this guy didn't have to write it. The cover for Final Night, and as we've been going through, this is for Robin 35, as we've been going through these issues, I like how Dixon is constantly building the world around Tim, and there's been some, we've had a whole plague and everything going on with Tim's universe. So it was really nice to get this issue back in the day and have Stephanie Brown on the front cover. And for, a brief little bit, you kind of go, oh, that's right. Stephanie's been here because we've had this giant event going on with Tim and even through Legacy where she really didn't appear through Cataclysm and a lot of that stuff. So to have her and Tim in their embrace on this front cover with everything burning. I remember buying this off the newsstand, and I think I knew Final Night was out and around at this time, but I was kind of singular in my issues that I would buy. Was mostly Bat Family. So I was like, what is this, the Final Night? Gotham City is on fire. So I always remember this being a really striking cover. And I even saw the solicitations coming up for it for the previous month, trying to figure out, what in the world is going on with this? And, one of those things, does it actually play into, the issue? So what do you think of this cover? Does it work for being a Robin cover, or does it work more for, if you're reading Final Night as a whole, does it work better for that?
It's the late great Mike Wieringo, so of course it works.
Yes.
Just in general.
Doesn't matter if it's Wieringo, it always works.
Absolutely. An indicator of what goes on inside, a little bit. The main focal point is, obviously, spoiler, kissing Robin there and him looking a little shocked, which does happen in the issue. The fire going on in the background, not so much, but it, hey, it still looks cool. But I do, kind of to your point, it does fit really well as a Robin cover, especially during this time, because this is around the time that, Tim's been trying to be kind of like a mentor toward Stephanie, and being a teenage boy, with teenage boy feelings, being probably attracted to her but wanting to suppress it because he feels like he has a duty as one of as Batman's sidekick and partner, and just in needing to set an example for Stephanie so that she's not just going out there. One of the lines in this issue, to paraphrase poorly, but so she's not just going out there having fun and thinking it's all about having a good time. It's a responsibility and it's real work, and they have a real job to do, and they need to have clear heads and a solid moral grounding, because it's not just, fun times and, rainbows and everything. It's very dangerous and everything. But because he has, the conflicting feelings towards her, he's also seeing Ari around this time as well. So it adds a little bit of, teenage soap opera-ish drama to it. I do remember around this time when I was reading it, I actually liked him better with Ari, at the time, but I've come to like Steph more. But around this time I was like, oh no, Stephanie Brown's kissing him, he belongs to he belongs to Ariana.
Belongs to Ari. She's gonna be mad.
Do that. But no, just as a cover, again, it's a great image, it's a striking image, it's just fun for the two characters, and again, it's Mike Wieringo and who colored it? Would that be Terry Austin coloring it?
I'm looking at my notes here.
Terry Austin.
Yep, Terry Austin.
Yep. Oh, wait, it's Mike Wieringo and Terry Austin art, so he probably inked it. Bob LaRose, it looks like, colored it, and Tasty Fried Color did the separations. But yeah, just a great image, and definitely, one that if I wasn't trying to find it in the back issues around that time, because this was a little bit before I was buying them new off the racks, but it was still one that I was looking for to complete my collection back then. Definitely something that I would grab off the stands and read, just because I want to know what's going on.
One last thing, having the Wieringo covers on it, there's there's something timeless I've always thought about his covers and his artwork that, here we are in 2022, jumping back to, 1996, that I don't feel that taken out of his cover art or even his issues now that, we're kind of past that it makes you feel like, oh, gee, that's clearly of the 90s. So let's just kick this thing open. And one last little bit of note, if you haven't read The Final Night, chronologically in the story, this is like fourth to last book in the Final Night series. So the story is wrapping itself up. And of course, all these released, in the month of November that they were coming out. There may have been a straggler going in to December for the, the Final Night, aftermath type of thing. So we're pretty far into, the last final push for the story. So, and that kind of comes to a head at the end of the issue. Right away, when I first got this, since I said I really wasn't reading much of the other Final Night, I thought instantly, oh, this is clearly a Mr. Freeze issue because there's snow and it's in, obviously in Gotham City. So spoilers, with the sun being taken out and there's no warmth in Gotham City or the world for that matter, and there's all this chaos going on, I thought, oh, it's going to be Killer Frost and going to be, Mr. Freeze and Icicle Johnny, whoever else in DC has a snow power, and there's really none of them in this story other than little, footnotes here or there. So forgive me for asking this, trying to remember like where you came in. Let me ask this question. Is this your first time reading this issue? Because I know some of us have been saying there's some issues that we're going to be reading for the first time. So let's lead with that.
No, I read it, back when I, bought it originally back in like 97. I always say Robin number 47 is like the first brand new issue I bought off the stands.
Gotcha.
I don't remember if that's completely accurate or not, but it's one of the first ones that I have in my long box that doesn't have like a back issue pricing sticker on it. So gotcha. I figured that's a good place to start. Bought the back issues. I read them as I bought them. I even read the Final Night crossover, I think in trade, way back then. And like I was telling you off mic about, the only thing I remember is for some reason the sun has gone out, and spoiler alert, spoiler, she's on the cover, kind of restarts the sun is Hal Jordan, who is now Parallax after he went crazy, killed a bunch of people, killed the Green Lantern Corps, tried to resurrect Coast City with his Green Lantern ring, went nuts and everything, whatever, and became Parallax, and then, eventually retconned into being the host of a, fear entity or whatever. But at the time, he was just a bad guy with a cool looking name and everything. He decided to sacrifice himself to restart the sun. And so that was kind of his last big heroic hurrah. But other than that, I really don't remember an awful lot about the story. Other than, it was enjoyable and I liked it and everything, but I don't remember a ton about it because this is like, 25 years ago at this point.
I do know while peek behind the curtain, while we were getting ready to record, the computer kind of crashed and I needed to restart it. So I was kind of tweeting like, hey, this is what we're talking about tonight. And right away, Pete Vera was like, oh, what a classic story. So I know that Pete is a sweaty like the rest of us and really digs into stuff. So I fully expect Pete goes, oh, I've read this and I know it and I love this book. I can hear him say it. So let's just move through. Iced is the title of this one, and we've got some. Right now, we're in the Staz Johnson era of Tim Drake for the artist that's doing this book. For those of you that may not know, and we do have something coming up for Staz Johnson, and I will tell Jay off mic. But I love this. This sounds really silly. That when Robin enters on the second page of the book, and he's got his bow staff, and he's riding the Robin ice bike mobile.
Of course, you love it. It's radical.
It's radical. Yes, it's so cool, and like just the little things. Of course, Tim's got the helmet on with the goggles, and he's got the R on top of it. And I don't know what it is, but just that pose with him and the battle staff is just so cool. I don't know why I latch on to that, but I just love the form that Stas Johnson uses for Tim, and especially when he's holding the staff. And on this, I was like, hey, Kenner, where is my Tim Drake Ice Mobile? Or
seriously,
the red scooter is really kind of cool. What do you think of Tim's entry here and the probably 20-plus feet of snow that is in Gotham City?
Oh, like I said, it's just straight up radical. It's cool because, I mean, just seeing guys jump, a motorcycle or a dirt bike, or in this case, like a snowmobile, it's just, action movie, coolness right there. It's some great visual storytelling, obviously, from Johnson and Bob Smith and Adrian Roy on inks and colors, respectively. So yeah, it's just really cool. Like you brought up before, Chuck Dixon likes to start any issue that he can with an action beat. And I love that, this is engaging action while giving us a little bit of exposition just so we know what's going on. But like you were talking about earlier, this really, other than having the final night on the cover and being in the world at that time that is covered in snow without any sort of sunlight, it's really a single isolated adventure that could have occurred under maybe slightly different circumstances, but still the same general story without it having to be part of the final night crossover. So that's what I like about it, that it's accessible because it didn't need the event to be told, but it was told well within the confines of the event, if that makes sense.
Oh, yeah. And I really feel like this could have been the night before the Joker's Wild.
Oh, yeah.
That it's in the snow. You could have left out, even where Tim says this is the record snowfall in Gotham City. Like
it could have just been a heavy winter. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. And there's not a lot of exposition in Tim's inner monologue other than when he's talking to, spoiler, we're getting ready to talk about her in just a second, where when she hugs him and a few pages later, she makes comment of like, oh, you're so warm, that Tim has to tell her, it's because of the suit, because it's so cold. That was just, more for Dixon going, oh yeah, there's this winter thing going on. So that's why this dialogue is here. Again, just kind of, we're going to repeat each other all night. I like the singularity of this issue, that sometimes pulling out crossovers, you can read one single issue and go, I really feel lost, like I don't get it. Dixon just does such a good job of, even in the beginning, of not really having to explain a whole lot to the reader. You either get it or you don't get it, and it could be, oh, I guess it's part of that whole entire thing. So seeing Steph on, what is this page? I love that it's down here in the corner. Page 4. I think Johnson draws her very well, very elegantly, as she's standing very tall and strong on top of the building, and it kind of gives us that notion of like, oh, hey, spoilers back in Gotham City after Tim gets a chance to land on top of the guys with his, Robin snowmobile and starts rounding them up. You haven't been on the show while we were talking about Stephanie, so I kind of want to get your thoughts of 1990s Stephanie Brown, spoiler. What were your thoughts of her as a character and more specifically during like this time frame for Tim?
At the time, I liked her just fine as a character, not so much as a romantic foil for Tim, but I did like it when she showed up. She's almost treated in these issues around this time, especially, almost like Robin was originally the reason that Robin was originally introduced for Batman. Pretty much to give someone for him to play off of and talk to while he's, solving cases and everything. So Stephanie's kind of that same thing. Gives Robin someone to, bounce back and forth with. Lets him be the heroic lead by his example because he is more experienced. He does know what it takes to be a hero, both, just in what you have inside of you with, your character and moral standing and everything, but also he knows how hard it is. How it really isn't just, swinging across rooftops and going on grand adventures. You have to make some difficult choices. So the fact that he's able to be kind of that figure for her, and she's able to be there for him to kind of soften up around, by him building up her character and helping her grow, she also helps him grow by helping him to just have a little bit more fun, be a little bit less of a stick in the mud sometimes. So they're really good foils for each other in that way. So I like her. There are a couple of comments that she makes in here that are a little, more dated than anything. So they come across as maybe a little eye rolly. But I've never been bothered by Stephanie Brown, and even go so far, I think I've said it, on here, if not on here, then other shows. I really liked her as Batgirl. Like her. Oh yeah. Her Batgirl series was fantastic. So she's a character that has gone from, kind of naive, kind of bubbly, thinking that everything is just for fun and games, to growing into a mature, full-fledged, very likable, very enjoyable, very well-rounded character over the years.
When the New 52 came around, I know we've talked about this on the podcast in the early days of the podcast, but if you're new, one of our chief complaints with some of the stuff in the New 52 was the characters that we lost in the switch over to the new continuity. And you had such a great, like Jay just said, such a great Batgirl story and all of this history that had been built over, 15 years or whatever, it was probably 15 years, but, over the course of the years she was in the book, to just completely losing her. We don't get her back till Rebirth. We lost, Wally and Kyle. Well, not Kyle, but, some of the other, Cassandra was the other one I was trying to think of. Mm-hmm. And so in this day and age we're going through this podcast chronologically, we're getting to see where Stephanie starts becoming a really full-fledged character again. So yeah, I can't recommend that her Batgirl run enough. It was such a great book written by Brian Q. Miller.
There's an issue where she and Supergirl fight 24 Draculas, and it is the greatest work of art I have ever read in my life.
I remember getting that book and I probably read that book 5-10 times. It was such a fun issue to have, and I thought this is one of those things we say sometimes, I didn't know this is an issue that I wanted, but it's an issue that I needed so much time.
Brian Warshaw, who I used to do the Comics Now show with and run that site with, we were trying to figure out a comic to cover for one of the, 1 week, and I don't even remember. I think even jokingly, I just mentioned, hey, we should do this where they fight 24 Draculas. He could not stand Stephanie Brown. But he was like, I need to read this. So he read it and he was like, we're doing this. And I'm pretty sure he read more of her series after that and started liking Steph after that. at least in that era. I don't think he necessarily liked her during Rebirth or anything like that. He felt that still stood, but yeah, he liked it enough after the magic of the 24 Draculas.
That's awesome. Now I want to stop recording this show and just go read that issue right
seriously,
now.
It's so
well,
great.
That's all for the Drake folks. Read Batgirl.
Punch it in, afterwards, so people know, which issue it is, because I can't remember which one, but they're going to want to read that one too.
There is an editor note while Jay is talking. I'm writing Stephanie Brown, Batgirl, and I wrote Dracula. The issue Jay and I are talking about is Batgirl. This would be Batgirl Volume 3 if you're looking for it digitally. So Batgirl Volume 3, Issue 14, and it's Batgirl and Supergirl and Dracula. I cannot recommend it enough. So, you know what? Even go ahead, stop this podcast, go download the issue digitally or run to your comic book store, and then maybe on your way to the comic book store, continue listening to the show, pick up the issue, and then come back to us. It's a great issue. So anyway, back to the show.
Dracula.
Enough, I saw Morbius today, so that really fits in with my whole theme today. Back to the issue at hand with Stephanie. Again, I would love to go through Chuck Dixon's notebooks and see. I fully believe Chuck Dixon had a board on the wall that had strings and tacks all the way around. Like, I've got this idea and this plot thread, and here's how this character interacts with this character. And this goes right back to probably one of the last times Stephanie was in the book. Of as soon as she lands, Tim right away is Stephanie, go home. Was instantly referring to her as Stephanie. I'm not going to call you spoiler. I'm not going to give in to your, delusion is probably the wrong word, but being off-putting to her in the nicest way that Tim is and probably can be, but also knowing that this is what his mentor has said. Like, hey, we need to not be working with this girl. Somebody like this is going to get hurt. She's not as experienced as we are. So there's this nice little playful bit back and forth, and it's not like, some writers will write a character and it's like 2 or 3 issues before they're like, oh yeah, I remember how this character sounds, or 5 years go by and it's like, do you not remember the character that you wrote? Dixon Dixon never really seems to miss a beat, and I'm using air quotes, their crime-fighting relationship hasn't missed a beat here. And just seeing them together on the snowmobile, and Stephanie has this little line of, oh, wow, you're warm. And Tim's like, electric heated suit, later, which is funny. And later you find out not only is the suit heated, but so is his cape as well. And I'm like, Of course Tim's cape would be, electrically heated. And the way that Stas draws Stephanie on page 6, where she has her head down on Tim's shoulder as they're driving through the streets of Gotham City before we get to the bottom panel here. I really liked how Stas really approaches his figure drawings and composition, that there's only a couple words, couple balloons in a couple of these panels from Dixon, but Stas has a way of emoting so much more. Like, you can get what Stephanie is thinking here, having her head on the back of, Robin's shoulder, of like, oh, well, why can't we be together type of thing? If you would just let me in, that type of thing. So I've always dug that about Stas's work here. We see Tim stop the snowmobile, and then they spot the 3 guys going into one of the warehouses, because like anybody would, when there's a natural disaster, you're going to have people that are rioting and looting and trying to take advantage of. And if this is the final night, why not go out with a bang? So I just kind of wanted you to talk about Stas Johnson and maybe your thoughts on his art, and before we go into the next little section here.
I really like it. It's a little more like, maybe, I wouldn't necessarily say detailed, but you get like Tom Grummett, or like we were talking earlier, like Mike Waringo, someone like that, just very clean and almost bright. Stas's pencils are a little bit darker and heavier. It's not like a Jim Lee or a Jason Fabok or some level of detail like that, but like on the top of page 7, you see the back of Tim's cape and like all the folds and everything.
Yeah.
Grummett could draw a cape like that looks just as good, but completely different. It wouldn't have like necessarily all the shadowing of the inks and everything there. It would probably be drape off of his shoulders in a different way. And I don't think this is a bad thing at all. I mean, it's no. Johnson has a distinct style, and it's not the first one that I think of when I think of a Tim Drake comic, but I still really like it. And like I said earlier, he's a great visual storyteller. Even to your point, in those 2 panels on page 6, where Stephanie has her eyes kind of half closed through her mask, and she's just kind of laying her head longingly on Tim's back, and then Tim in the next panel over, his eyes are also squinted, but it's more in determination and maybe even annoyance, because you feel where Stephanie's coming from, just wanting to prove herself, the entire reason she became Spoiler was to screw with her dad, who was a criminal.
Yeah.
So, she wants to do good, but she doesn't necessarily know how to. But then to Tim's point, it's like, this isn't just about messing with a family member. Like there is so much more to this than like it requires training. It's not just finding out about someone's plan secondhand because you just happen to be related to them and then going and messing with them and then leaving. Like we have to save people. We have to stop crimes and we have to prevent as much stuff as we can. And a lot of that requires detective work and everything. So you see where she's coming from and you see where Tim's coming from as well. And Stas just plays into their characters so incredibly well. I mean, in those two panels. And then, like you have Stephanie, a couple pages before, trying to strike a heroic pose to get, Tim's attention. And then once they actually get into the action on page 7, you have Tim has his batarang out and is kind of charging forward into the situation, knowing what to do. Whereas Stephanie's kind of leaning back a little bit because she's, not positive, the next move that they need to make. So there's really good body language that they have here and everything. And I just really, really like it. Even if I think, especially when I was younger, I didn't appreciate it as much, but I've come to appreciate it a lot more now.
And I'm going to take points away from Terrence and Ryan because I so bad wanted to be able for them to be here. And I think I found the last issue that Stephanie was in because on episode 88 of the show, we coined a phrase that has stood for these last few years. It's all about fluidity. So for the Night of the Ninja storyline and going into the Cherax issue is the whole fluidity thing. The issue before that, there was a issue of Robin where they fall into this warehouse and they're dancing through these mattresses. And because we had said on episode 88, like, oh, I wonder if Dixon has ever used, fluidity in an issue. And we were like, oh my gosh, we found it. So the reason I want to say it is Tim makes a comment of them as they're tackling the guy with the chainsaw. They're falling into this warehouse. Tim says, I wish this was a mattress store because that's what they fell in the last time. And that's what caused me to use the word fluidity. And as I'm reading this, I'm like, Chuck Dixon, I love you, man. And Stas Johnson, you did well because there's a lot of fluidity in this between Tim and Steph falling into the warehouse. Stephanie, it's almost in the role reversal where Tim is the one falling in this time and it's Stephanie kind of coming to Tim's rescue, and it was flipped the last time. So there'll be an editor's note when I can get the episode that I'm thinking of, but the fluidity came from, that particular episode. So okay, Terrence and Ryan, I hope you're listening to this one. This is the first time that I've gone back into a previous episode that we've done an edit from, and I'm pulling that edit from that previous episode. It'll make a whole lot more sense here in about 2 seconds. So I'm using the audio that I put in episode 88 that I took from episode 70. So rather than me re-explain it all over again, I'm just going to let myself do it the way that I did before on episode 88, and you'll hear the audio from episode 70. Oh, this is editing 101 right here, folks. So check out the thing that I did back in 2018. So here we go. Hello, everyone. A little punch into the episode here. I couldn't let this go by with having fluidity actually written in the pages of the Robin comic. I started sifting through the older episodes of the show, like we were saying, wondering where we first used it. So we first used fluidity on March 28th, 2018 on episode 70 of the show while we were talking about Robin 16, and that was a Robin spoiler episode where she gets kidnapped, and you'll hear us talk a little bit about it. But I wanted you to hear the actual audio where I used the word so eloquently. I didn't know if I was using it correctly the first time, but we used the word fluidity for the first time on the show. So I just wanted you to hear that and to kind of tie this whole thing together. Here you go. The shot I really like is on 4 where they flipped the bed over and the very first panel, like all these panels are kind of tilted to the side, the insert panels, which I think is really kind of cool. And the guy's looks like has blood coming out of his mouth from where the bed kind of came down on him, and the motion of them flipping up, I think, is really fluid. So just in these first few pages here, the use of the smoke grenades, and I love it when they draw Robin with the bow staff and him kind of swinging it around, kicking the guys, and like sliding on the ground. Just some really cool motion and a fluidity through that. So that's kind of what you guys get impressions on the opening scene through 4 there. Ryan.
Okay, so yeah, when I read this, I just thought that like we were saying, the writing helps the flow in this early part. I mean, it's very fast paced, and once you get into the panels that do different things that are outside of your standard, square panels, it helps, like you said, the fluidity. But it reminds me a lot of like a martial arts movie, like where they're using props in the environment, in the scene, to kind of block themselves off or put them in a strategic position, or it's kind of a gag, right? Like Stephanie is like chained to this bed, and so they've got to pick up the bed, but they're going to use it to their advantage to get out of this situation. It's something that this whole scene is something that I could see happen in a very well like choreographed martial arts movie or something, and it's kind of fun.
Like Robin is Jackie Chan, is what you're saying.
Exactly. Yeah,
Terrence.
I liked your use of the word fluidity, Rob. That word a day dictionary, word a day calendar I got you for Christmas is working.
And my wife, every time I use a big word like that, she's like, "Who told you how to say that word?"
Yeah.
I'm like, why did I use it wrong? And usually I do. Terrence and Ryan, you lose I'm kicking you off the podcast, and you're not here, so I guess I pre-kicked you off, or Staz Johnson did. So I thought this was a great callback to that particular issue of Robin, where, again, that's one of these things that makes reading this era of comics especially cool, dealing with Detective and Robin, and then getting into Birds of Prey and Nightwing and Catwoman that Dixon would write. He has such a way of, like, hey, remember that thing that you read 6 issues ago, or maybe even 10 issues ago? If you're really a fan of it, he's going to give you these little nuggets of like a little reward, like, hey, you've been reading this book for so long, you remember this thing, hint, hint, wink, wink. So I love little moments like this, and the sequence of them coming in here. Of course, the situation's a little bit more dire with, Buzzcat chainsaws that you could probably buy at the Dixon hardware store, which is, I love that Dixon product placement that's not a real thing, but you see it everywhere. So what do you think of this warehouse? Did that come into your mind at all, that little warehouse mattress thing with Stephanie?
It did not, just because it's been so long since I've A, heard that episode, and B, read that issue. But, I mean, I do love the fact that if you know, you know. And that's, you can appreciate it on that level. If you don't know, it's still a good line, because I love that Tim even says, I'm telling Stephanie, don't do this, don't do that. I need to watch over her, but then, I'm the one who screwed up. Right. So then, when he says, wish this was a mattress store, if you hadn't read that issue or had forgotten that issue with the mattress store, it just sounds like a funny line, because it's like, yeah, I'd rather fall on top of a bunch of mattresses than a bunch of TVs too. I mean, who wouldn't? So I just really like that. And that even in, talking about both Tim and Steph's characters, it's like she's supposed to be kind of like he's like the straight man to her, not necessarily comic relief, but just the interplay that they have. He's the one that has to be more focused, has more experience, but even he, at least to himself, can willingly admit, I need to keep her in sight, but then I'm still the one who, messes up because, I didn't realize that the entire warehouse roof is going to buckle because they cut through enough of it, and now we're falling. So I like that little bit of humility from Tim there. And then, that just leading into the, pretty cool sequence within the warehouse that I don't think you've fully gotten into yet, but it's just a fun little scene too.
It was a great way to set that up. So, like Jay just alluded to, now they're buried. So the thing that he was trying to be like, Stephanie, go home, you don't want to get us in trouble or anything like that, or cause there to be an accident that I got to save you from. They're literally now in that because of, a misstep from Tim, but the really cool thing, I think we've said it about Adrienne Roy, I love her coloring, especially in the back half of this issue in dealing with the snow. The colors she chooses to use to kind of mute to give you that feel of, okay, it's dark, there's not much light, so the reds aren't really red. Stephanie's blonde hair is not going to translate that color. So her colors are vibrant all the way through. It's one of those cool things with comics. It's just a joy to look at, especially when the art's drawn really well and then the color is done so good, and especially on this paper back in the day, the colors just really pop off of the page. So the next couple pages going through 11 and 13 are really just Dixon setting up like, all right, I'm getting ready to get into my next story arc, which is going to be a 2-issue story going through Robin 36 and 37. It's a Toyman story. So you get just this little bit of setup with the Toyman building a rocket, zipping off, and back in the day before I got to figuring out that this was Toyman, I thought this was Mr. Freeze right here. Thinking, oh, Mr. Freeze was in Arkham, that makes perfect sense, and he found a way to get out, and he's got a jetpack. And then I go, oh, it's Toyman. Oh, Toyman, you mean guy that fights Superman? Yeah, that Toyman. I always thought that was an odd pairing, and there's more of that in our next episode. So we don't have to spend a lot of time there, but I thought that was just one of those. Your voice was perfect, like Toyman. Like, of all of the villains that you could have chose to pick, Dixon reaches into his bag of toys, wink, wink,
and pulls out a man.
Pulls out a toy man. That character name was always one of those, like, what are we going to call this guy who has toys? Toy man? That sounds good, Billy. Run it to the press. So we'll get more of that in a minute, but just by your voice, was that a little moment for you too? Like, what? Who?
Yeah, I'd completely forgotten about it. I didn't realize who it was. Even when they said Winslow's shot, I was like, which Batman villain is Winslow's shot?
No, that's what I did.
Then I read, oh, the Toyman. That's right. That's good. Yeah. But then I, remember as I was flipping through my box trying to find the issue, going a little too far ahead. So, I had to kind of come back a little bit, and I saw the covers of the issues with Toyman, and at least one of them has him on it, because I think I don't know if it's a 1-issue arc or a 2-issue arc, but I mean, it's definitely at least one, obviously. But he's on the cover of it, so I should have connected the dots there. But I don't know. I don't think about Toyman that often. So
really, Jay, I'm really kind of shocked.
I mean, the last time I thought about Toyman in any length and any sort of detail was when I rewatched Superman, the animated series, a couple months ago, so I could rank every episode. And there were a couple of Toyman episodes, so obviously I thought about Toyman then. Haven't really thought about him much since then.
So on my other show with the Carusos, Nico is always famous for saying it's all about content in the episode. We're giving the listeners content. So here's some content for you you can tie into the next episode of this show. You and I, we collect action figures. We probably have a plethora. This is where you're going to put in the Three Amigos soundbite.
I have put many beautiful piñatas in the storeroom, each of them filled with little surprises.
Many piñatas?
Oh, yes, many.
Would you say I have a plethora of piñatas?
A what?
A plethora.
Oh, yes. You have a plethora.
Jefe, what is a plethora?
Why, guapo?
Well, you told me I have a plethora. And I just would like to know if you know what a plethora is. I would not like to think that a person would tell someone he has a plethora and find out that that person has no idea what it means to have a plethora.
Forgive me, guapo. I know that I, Jefe, do not have your superior intellect and education. But could it be that once again you are angry at something else and are looking to take it out on me.
Having as many, I remember buying the Toy Man action figure and only getting him for the collect and connect piece that was the Apache Chief. So I, of course, I'm not putting a Toy Man in the front of the shelf. I'm putting him in the back of the shelf. And if he's hidden in the shadows, I don't care. So I was cleaning my shelf one time, grabbed a Toy Man, sat him flat. He's laying on his back. And for whatever reason, he fell off the table and broke his head.
Oh, no.
So I have a headless Toy Man that I have in a box that I was always like, oh, gee, that would really kind of suck. That sucks, breaking your action figures. So tune into the next episode. This whole thing will come full circle about the Toy Man and action figures. See what I did there?
Yes.
You have to tune into the next episode.
Gotta hook them.
That's right.
Like this issue hooks us with Toy Man skiing out of a prison. This is Rob skiing out of the prison of broken toy. Let's just move on.
Yeah, let's move on because Rob already we've derailed this. So Tim is buried in snow with Stephanie. Again, talking about Stas Johnson, Tim realizing that Stephanie's buried in snow and giving her mouth to mouth to see if she dies. It's going to be Tim's fault, and you got to wonder. She was definitely playing possum here, and I mean, it's one of those things. We talk about Tim being the good boyfriend. He's trying to do the right thing by Ari, and here he is giving mouth-to-mouth to Stephanie because he's doing life-saving measures. And Stephanie plays possum to have the moment of Robin giving her a kiss where she might have been kind of, sort of, knocked out a little bit, but she has a little fun with Tim for this. And Tim's like, okay, hold on, whatever. And I think it's a good series of panels, and it kind of really shows you Tim's character and who he is, and this flippant nature that Stephanie has, that she's taking this as like, oh, we've got some alone time. It's just you and I. So Dixon does a really good job with this, and Tim kind of putting her in place like, we weren't the only ones in here. The guy that we were chasing is in here as well. We're going to go after him. So he's kind of giving the riot act to her for it. And, Tim says here on, 14, we didn't fall in here by ourselves, and going in through 15.
I just love Stephanie's, what?
Yeah. What? I think that's hilarious. I really like over the next series of panels into 16 where Tim is expressing why he's still doing what they're doing. So this is where, if anything's really going to tie into the final night, that this literally could be the final night on Earth. There's no sun. There's nothing at the moment. And Stephanie is kind of like, this guy was trying to kill us. So you're going to want to try and save the guy that was trying to kill us. And when we get him, he might still kill us. And Tim is telling her, if that's the case, fine. This is a job, and I want to go with the clean conscience that I did everything I could. And that makes me, as a Robin fan, go, I just like this kid. He reminds me of Corey Matthews from I'm blanking on Boy Meets World. I'm like, he's the Corey Matthews of the Bat family, doing the right thing because the right thing is what needs to be done.
So does that make Mr. Feeney Batman? I'm okay with that.
Eric is clearly Nightwing.
Oh, yes. Actually, he's Batman because, Will Friedle voiced Terry McGinnis.
See, we cross-pollinated there.
Bringing it full circle again.
Again. What do you think of Dixon dialogue?
It's great. I mean, before it, Stephanie's being a little, inappropriate and a little. I mean, I'm sure, there's some. I mean, in this day, you kind of want to be careful with, especially with not, like she gave him a kiss when he didn't, necessarily give her, the consent of it. But I mean, there's definitely, mutual attraction there, and Tim's not unattracted to her, but he's just trying to stay focused by kind of overplaying the stern leader role that he has as someone who has more experience. But then, yeah, that leads into a really, really great character moment that is so great because you can understand both of their points of view. Mm-hmm. Like Stephanie saying, he probably came from the same neighborhood I did. He probably has the same excuses everyone else would have. Like, oh, I was poor. Daddy beat me. He didn't love me. We didn't have, video games. I came from the same thing and I'm not out here trying to kill people. But, then Tim says, even if he was trying to kill us, we need to do everything we can to save everyone that we can because it's the right thing to do. And like you said, if this is the last thing that I will ever do, because this is the last night I have on Earth, I don't want to go out doing the wrong thing. And just really laying out there the entire MO of Batman really is not wanting tragedy and unnecessary death to befall anybody. It's not about punching crime in the face and putting criminals in traction. It's about keeping people from, dying unnecessarily and ultimately giving them a chance to reform. Because if they had let that guy die, he wouldn't get to reform. We don't know if he reforms, but still, they have to give them that chance. And I just love it. That's all I can really do is just repeat the same thing. But it's a great thesis on Batman, Robin, and why they do what they do.
And this is one of those where you go, well, why is the Robin character important, or why do you even read comic books? Those type of discussions. I would go read these couple pages of dialogue, and Dixon does a great way in the preceding couple pages of, well, here is also why they're doing what they're doing, to make sure nothing happens to anyone else, and going out and saving the people that maybe can't save themselves. And you have what they think is the guy with the chainsaw is not, it's a mother, it's a woman that they realize, and oh, by the way, it's not only a mother, it's a mother and her child that probably came into this warehouse because, there's 200 feet of snow or whatever in Gotham City, and they're trying to stay warm. And this is where Tim's like, oh, I'll take my, cape off. It's a electric heater. It's the Bat electric blanket cape, Well, you get it from Wayne Tech Enterprises. That now Stephanie is having a different reaction of like, oh, okay, well, now her whole MO has changed. Like, let's just leave and forget this guy with the chainsaw, let him here to die. Now we got to try and keep this mother and child alive. And she was shielding her child from the snow when either it was snowing, they were just sleeping there, or when the roof caved in. Dixon lets you have that little bit of breath and go, oh, that's so nice. Oh, geez, there's a chainsaw. Where, chainsaw hacky and the Buzzcat is back. And again, a great series of pages where Tim's using the batarang that he was using to cut through the snow with, jabs into the chainsaw, and I think is also shielding himself with his gauntlet. And pieces of the chainsaw are flying into the guy's face, and then Tim kind of punches the guy and says, he's worried about his face. Like, oh, my face. And Tim says, nothing compared to what you had planned for me, that this is a guy he's got a couple little pieces of ice and chainsaw blade that hit his face, but 2 seconds ago he was going to drive the chainsaw through everybody in the room. So you kind of see a little bit of that of Tim coming unrestrained here as well. And then we move to them getting out of the hole. So what do you think of that section before we get into the last couple pages?
I mean, it's great. Just example of, Tim's determination. I mean, I do like, Stephanie doesn't immediately have a turn. I mean, of course she's not a villain, but I mean, you can tell that she's begrudgingly wanting to find the guy because, I mean, she still thinks, why? If we find him, he's probably, that gives him another chance to kill us. So she gives him like that glare on page 16. And then at some point puts her mask and hood back on, but whatever. But then, it is, kind of shocking that they come across, a woman instead of the guy that they were trying to find. And then, the young child. It all feels very claustrophobic, but it's not, it's not hard to follow. It's not so condensed and tight that you don't know what's going on. That just adds to the tension of, them trying to escape. and find this other guy that they were looking for. And then once he finds them, that short fight between him and Tim that results in the guy, getting an old slap across the face. Again, it's just a really well plotted and illustrated sequence that has some good dialogue, and it all gets wrapped up. I'll segue again into the final page where Stephanie kind of has the entire lesson learned was that, if we hadn't gone back for him, we wouldn't have found these two innocent people. Mm-hmm. So, realizing that she shouldn't be so quick to dismiss not even, somebody who is circumstances just like this, where it's like, got to go find this other villain or, crook or thief or whatever, because, hey, we may find something else along the way. But just thinking more just broadly is don't overlook one detail in, cases or, whatever you're doing. Don't overlook one detail, because then you might miss the bigger picture that you're supposed to see something else. So even though it's not laid out explicitly there, it's still just a great lesson for her and even Robin to remember and remind himself why he does what he does.
Yeah. And it's a very, and I half want to wonder if Dixon wasn't putting a little bit of Mike Brady in here on the last page. Like, I guess I learned something tonight, like I'm waiting for the more you know star.
Yeah, little piano trill.
Yeah, I think I have that soundbite somewhere. I use one other time. So if I do, it's you probably definitely heard it, or you will going to hear it. I know through the final night issues that as things progressively got darker, one of the things was the color palette kind of changes to let you know that things are gloom and there's no light. So this was something as they're getting out, they put a little yellow orb, to let you know that there's some sunlight coming through, and they come out to the bright sun. And so the color palette has drastically changed to be like what you're traditionally reading into it. So even in just this one issue that you're reading, you go from, really muted to quickly being a bright color palette all over again. So again, I've already sung the praises of Adrian Roy. But I thought this was just a fun single issue. We had a couple earlier in the episode pre Gotham City pandemic for the story for the Clench and everything, that we found a couple detective issues and a couple Robin issues that they were single one and done type of issues. And this is, yes, it's in with the Final Night storyline, but this is another one of those that I kind of sometimes forget, but when you come across a book like this, it's a great character piece for both Tim and Stephanie, and like you said, it's really underlining who and what these characters are. So if you're a fan of Batman and you're a fan of Robin and why these heroes do what they do in these couple pages that we talked about, it's really underlining, oh, by the way, Dixon's writing the Batman thesis with Tim and Stephanie, and giving you that in a nutshell in like a 4-panel spot, and you totally get why these characters are so popular as they are, and what makes a character like Tim, why he is the best Robin. So this was a fun issue, and I thought this was a good way to get us kind of back on track to get back in the Robin comics. And I know in our text message thread you had said, you're just looking to get back into reading the Robin comics proper, and I'm liking what's on the horizon. And I think I'm literally 2 issues away from me coming across some books that I've never ever read before. So I'm nice. really, really excited about that. So I'm going to pun this last one because I say it on every issue, but with it being called The Final Night, what are your final thoughts on the Final Night issue of this book?
Like we've said a couple of times, it's a great thesis statement on what it means to be Batman and Robin and just a hero in Gotham City. And I mean, even to your the point that you just made a minute ago, it is miraculously technically a tie-in to a big event that is still a satisfactory one and done issue. We don't have see the previous 5 issues and then the upcoming 3 issues to see where we were and where we're going. And this is just a brief vignette bridging those issues. Like we were talking at the top, changed just a couple of lines of dialogue and even a couple of, circumstances. Even if it wasn't something that took place during winter, going by the cover, if it was like an arson spree, this could have still worked, just instead of finding people, trapped under, 20 feet of snow, it's finding people within like a burning building or rubble or something like that. It's still a very kind of evergreen story and idea. And even though it has like an event title emblazoned on it and has that branding on there, it's still, I would consider this a one and done issue, which are just incredibly refreshing. And I like coming across because, you get everything that you need out of that issue in that single issue. And you don't necessarily need anything, like a prelude to it. And it doesn't necessarily lead to too much other than, the brief little cameo with Toyman there. But even then, you don't necessarily have to read the next issue to get a satisfying story. It's satisfying and great enough that you want to keep reading. It's a comic that makes you want to read more comics.
Yeah. So that is a great way to segue to say, read more comics. And the more comics you need to read are Robin 36 and 37 for the Toy Story issue that Chuck Dixon put in there. On one of the previous episodes that we had done, technically the Robin Plus One, or the Robin Impulse issue rather, fits it technically in between 36 and 37, but we've already reviewed that. So Robin 36 and 37 for your next episode, and hopefully we will have the whole gang back on that. Yes. But in the meantime, before we get out of here, Jay, anybody wants to talk more comics with you, where can they do so, Jay?
I'm on Twitter at JAYAWS. Also have my own, that's my personal handle. Also a comics-based handle and blog called at Comic Pause, Pause, like you pause a video game. Recently read and reviewed Mark Waid, Dan Mora, Tamara Bonvillain, and I want to say Clayton maybe Aditya Bedekar. I can't remember the letterer. I'm sorry. But World's Finest #1, Batman, Superman, World's Finest #1, which was just fantastic. Just a great, great, great comic. We reviewed that and just post just random comic-y, screenshots from books I'm reading or, just discussions, whatever. Always around there. And on a bunch of different, nerdy groups on Facebook that you've probably seen me in. So, reach out. And I hate to do this because it feels like, playing. But for like 2 years on Twitter, I've been so close to 600 followers. So let's try to bump those numbers up because I'm at 597 right now. So let's put me over the top there.
That's so frustrating when you're kind of at a benchmark. You're like, I'm so close to that thing. So if you're following us on Twitter at ELTD Podcast, head over to Jay and let's get him over that 600. And I haven't looked at mine in a while. I was kind of curious. Oh, see, I'm a lot lower. I'm in the threes. I'm a 388 for followers. So as far as the Drummer Rob 10, so if you can get me up over 400, and the Drake, we're actually kind of close to 1,000. Nice. We're at 963. So I knew we have been at 900. We kind of stalled at like 940 for a while. So, and again, we were gone for about 4 months. So hopefully we'll get that back up. Like I said, you can follow me at Drummer Rob 10. My other show with Nick and Nico Caruso is a KISS-based podcast at RBTE Podcast. And recently on our last episode, we reviewed Def Leppard's Adrenalized album. And just yesterday, this being the first, was the 30th anniversary of Def Leppard's Adrenalized album. So that made me feel really old from 1992. So you can check out all of our handles and other shows, and you can follow Ryan SMB Movie. And Terrence has a couple different handles, but O'Neill Ties is one of his as well. So you can follow the Drakes on all of our social media handles. So for Jay, I'm Rob. You've been listening to the Batman Universe, and more importantly, you've been listening to Robin. Everyone loves a Drake. We'll see you on the next episode. Take care. My gosh, I was tongue-twisted.